Hello, good afternoon. I'm Mr. Irwin. I'm one of the Year 6 teachers here at St. Peter's. Now, we're in a strange world at the moment, aren't we? So this is a bit strange for me because at this stage of the year, if it had been a normal year, I would be inviting you guys in as Year 5 parents to talk you through this process that your children will be going through in the next year or so. So the aim of this, I'll break this into two chunks. The first thing I'm going to do is just talk you through the PESE process, the primary entry into secondary education. We've obviously got the PESE test, which we normally call the 11 plus or the Kent test. So we'll talk through the format of those tests, how they're set out and how you can help your child. Now, the test itself usually takes place in September. It's usually when the children arrive at the beginning of Year 6. It's usually within that first week. So it's a pretty much, quite a scary way to start the year in lots of ways. But every single person taking that test is in exactly the same boat. And it doesn't matter that they haven't been focused during the summer holidays. I'm sure you will have done some work at home. You'll have done some practice work, and we'll talk through some of that later on. Because this test isn't finding out just what they've learnt. This test is finding out their innate ability. One of the huge main elements, that reasoning paper, is split up into a verbal reasoning, non-verbal reasoning, and spatial reasoning, and none of those elements are anything to do with schoolwork. We're not allowed to practice them at school, other than to do one day's assessment early in the year, which we tend to do in January in both year 3, 4, and 5. The children will do a practice test in a verbal and non-verbal reasoning. But apart from that, we don't do lessons in this. We are legally not allowed to. We can, as a school, be disapplied from the Kent test proceedings if we were found to be working on this in school. We work on, obviously, all the curriculum, but that reasoning element and the 11 plus is not curriculum based, or some of it isn't anyway. So it's really important that the children do have time to practice this at home. There's lots of different ways you can do that, but that familiarization is really important. The test itself these days takes place on one day, split into 5 main parts really. There's a reasoning paper which has verbal, non-verbal and spatial. And then there's a maths and an English element, and those are split into 2 booklets, 2 test booklets. So as I said, the verbal, non-verbal and spatial, they are to do with visualization problems, logical thinking. There'll be high-level vocabulary for the children to unpack. There'll be a lot of problem solving. It's more of an old-fashioned IQ test in lots of ways. So the children, particularly in those reasoning elements, need chance to look, to familiarize themselves with what they're being expected to do. The maths and the English, obviously, that is a huge element of what we teach at school. The maths test itself will be roughly 25 minutes, roughly 25 questions, a lot of graphs, a lot of things to look at, a lot of information to read. Then the English paper is split up into 3 sections again. So there's a comprehension, they read the text, they answer the questions, and then there's 2 sentence activities, normally a sentence completion, and then an activity where they've got to look at the punctuation errors within the sentence, or a spelling task. So those form the English paper. One bit of advice I would always give the kids is to, the minute they open that English test, the minute I say go, turn to the back of that English paper and start work on those quick sentences, the quick spelling activities, because the children will work at those at a far greater pace, leaving them with most of the time to turn back, read the text and get focused on that comprehension. That's the majority of the day, doing those 2 big test booklets with those 5 main parts in them. The last thing they'll do is a writing task. The children will be given a range of prompts to get them thinking. A couple of years ago, we had things like the magic box. We've had a visit to the library. And that's all it says on the sheet. And it just says, write a story based on this idea. And the children can develop anything. But what are they looking for? They're looking for high-level language, vocabulary being used, paragraphing, sentence construction, just that real wow within the writing, so that the audience for that writing task will be just really, blown away by the level of quality and interest from that task. As I said, that task is not marked as part of the testing procedure. That writing task is stored in an envelope and sent to what we call the head teacher's appeal panel. Both Mr. Hunter Whitehouse and myself have been on that panel for a number of years now, and it's a panel of senior teachers from around Kent. We will sit in a room and we will be presented with thousands of examples of children's work who didn't quite pass the test on the day. Because the important thing to understand with the 11 plus is no good massively passing one test, massively passing another, and falling 1 mark short in the next. That would be classed as a fail. Instead, you have to reach the required standard in all of the elements. So if your child does fall short in one, maybe in two of the tasks, but is only just short, then we can send their work to an appeals panel. Now, as year 5 parents, you know that your children are going to be working really hard this year, and the 11 plus may very well be a goal in your and in their minds. So you've got to encourage them to look very carefully at the work they do, the layout, the presentation, the accuracy, how much is being completed, attention to detail, because their maths book and their English book, as well as that writing task, may very well be sent, if needed, to that head teacher's appeal panel. And it would be all of that evidence that's taken into account to allow those senior teachers to look at the work and say, okay, that this child hasn't quite met the grade of passing the test on the day, but their work shows they really should have passed the test and are very, very suited to a grammar school. And that's what the appeal panel does. And a huge percentage of the children who go to grammar school get through on that head teacher's appeal. You won't actually know that your child's been appealed for at that stage. It happens very early on, before any of the results are sent. So when you get the results come through, if it says your child has been assessed as suitable for grammar school, you won't necessarily know whether they passed the test or whether they went through on the appeals panel, because they are both equally valid entries into the grammar school system. As it says there, examples of questions: visualization, logical thinking, lots of problem solving, high level of speed, real important that the children understand that idea of pace as they work. High level vocabulary, keep them reading, keep discussing the words they're using, keep looking at those difficult language examples that they come across in any stories they read or anything that you share with them, so that you can discuss that and develop that depth of vocabulary. Patterns and sequences, and then, as I said, sentences and spelling. It's really important that those things are considered this year. Verbal reasoning, I could spend my time now just going through lots of questions. I'm not going to talk you through them all, I don't think, because it'll take a long time. But you can see a question on the board. There's some instructions. The children have to follow this, and you can see the verbal reasoning, that question type, very different than anything we do in school. I'm even putting the answers up for you. You can go through this at your own time, perhaps pause the video and see whether you can work out the answers. We're not going to mark your work, but do the best you can. So there's another type. They're looking for 4 letters hidden at the end of one word and the beginning of the next. And then we've got the word mend and the word seat. Another type: find 2 words, one from each set, that go together to make one correctly spelled word. And we'd say to the children, take one from the left and one from the right, put them together. Does it make a word? Up hack? No. Up it? No. Up rip? No. Band hack? No. Bandit? Oh, bandit. Yeah, that's a word. The problem comes when we get to number 2. Pack sun? No. Pack sped? No. Pack age? Doesn't sound like a word. Pack age, is that a word? But when you write it together, the children realize they've just written the word package. So sometimes it'll be that encouragement to make notes and to write things down. Strange questions again. This all comes in the verbal reasoning. If the code for TEAR is Q34M, what is the code for ATE? If MN056 means drink, what does 605M mean? And it's looking at those letters, looking at those numbers, and swapping them around, working out what the code means. And there are the answers. All the words on the right-hand side, except one, can be formed from the letters of the word in capitals. Underline the word that cannot be made. On the first line, you can't make felt because there's no T in flower. And on the next line, you can't make glisten because there's no what? There's no L in sweating. But then, and this is the thing they try and do, they keep talking about trying to tutor-proof the test. Every now and then, they throw in a brand new element that the children have never seen before, the teachers have never seen before, tutors have never seen before, because they've just invented a brand new question type. They did it this year, they did it last year. So we get things like this. In these questions, the word can be rearranged to form a complete sentence with one word or group of words left over. Find the leftover word or group of words. Now, the instructions are quite wordy, but the children have to go through, read each of those little chunks, and then say, which one do we not put in the sentence to make it make sense? And I would say it's they forgot to deliver the parcel, which means which should be left out. The next one, you cannot leave unless you have finished, which means only if is left out. And then we've got the last two. And then we had this one this year. This one really threw the kids in 2019. The sentence below is missing a word, marked with a question mark. The missing word must rhyme with the word in capitals. Find the rhyming word and then pick the word that means the same from the options given. So we were given the word blushed in capitals. Then we were given the sentence, he something to get there on time. The question mark word must rhyme with blushed. So blushed must be rushed. He rushed to get there on time. Then you've got to look down the list and find a word that means the same as rushed, which obviously would be hurried. And then the bottom one, we've got strong. The word that rhymes would be long. And then we'd have the answer yearn. The non-verbal reasoning, patterns and sequences, lots of things to think about, very visual, very much an old-fashioned IQ test. Just highlight the answers there. These ones are about rotations and mirror images, and the children have to get their head around the instructions. There will be a few examples. I will certainly be there to talk them through, but then they will be given short amounts of time, maybe 9 minutes to do 6 questions in lots of different sections of that test. More and more patterns and problems to solve. As I said, the maths, 5 minutes of practice tests, 25 minutes, 25 questions. There's lots of things you can do at home. As I said, those are the writing test prompts. How can you help your children? Well, definitely practice. There's a brilliant website called 11 Plus for parents, but there's lots of booklets you can buy. Practice booklets, practice tests. Smiths have got them, WH Smiths, and Waterstones, and you'll be able to buy all those. If you are buying something as a test, make sure it's the multiple choice ones. I'll point you in the direction of two, the middle one with the blue pack. I don't think it's blue anymore, but it's made by a company called CGP. They are fantastic. They're normally cheaper, but they are wonderful for practice. If you want to do a test, on the other hand, I recommend the ones in the top right-hand corner. They are made by a company called GL Assessment, and that is the company that makes the real test for Kent that we use every year. So it'll give the children the more accurate format and practice of that. If you want to know any more, I'm in year 6. Come and find me, ask for me, give me a phone at the office, and I'll be able to come out and answer any questions. Hopefully that's of some use, but main thing is, yes, the children need to be familiarizing themselves. Yes, they need to be practicing, but all the way through this year, that work they do in class, in English and maths particularly, will be or might be used in evidence if they get sent to a head teacher's appeal. So it's really important that they really work at that throughout this year. The whole process is age standardized, and it's really important to understand that whatever age your child is, if your child was born in September and another child in the year group was born in August, there's nearly a year between those two. And both those children, if they both score 20 out of 30, the score they would be given, the younger child will be given more points because it would be standardized according to their age. And of course, that child born in August may very well have lived, well, a year less than the child born in September. So the scores are all age standardized. The system works fantastically well. So there's the day of the test, There's a head teacher's appeal, but after that, if you don't quite make it through that process, there is a parent appeal process